We're going to talk a little bit about Costa. Costa is one of the accounts that we have here at McGarrah Jessee. I'm not sure how much you guys know about or have ever heard of Costas, but they're basically high-end kind of premium sunglasses. They're made for fishing, and they're prevalent in the Southeast, so like SEC, ACC schools, like kids wear these a lot. But to give you a sense of order of magnitude, Costa is about a $50 to $70 million company. Typically, that's about how large a company or a brand would be to kind of afford, if you will, an ad agency. Now, what's atypical about Costa is that we don't just do advertising, and I know we're McGarrah Jessee, an advertising agency, and if you went to the Yellow Book and looked up Austin, Texas, and punched in ad agencies, we'd come up. But we do a lot more for our clients than just make print ads or TV spots. And Costa is probably the best example of a brand here that is doing things that's pretty atypical from, say, how an AT&T or a Ford might work. And it kind of breaks into a number of different buckets. But if you imagine Costa, a brand, almost as a magazine, and it publishes content or material over the course of a calendar year. And that content might take any number of different forms, but they might be short-form movies, episodic video. There's apparel or T-shirts, so they might be whole programs based on things you'd wear. There are catalogs that go to consumers, that go to retail, that play in what we call verticals, so that's books dedicated to fishing. Those would be people most interested in what we have to say. But one of the coolest things we do is go on these trips. And Tim, who is our lead creative on Costa, has been on about 4 or 5 of these. And places that we've been read like the Galapagos Islands, Guyana, and there's a map here, and I'll show you guys just how far off the grid we went. But this is literally like me, Tim, and like regular people, that need insurance and shots to go to places like this. But we're going to be in Mexico in 2 weeks, in the Yucatan, and we've been to Belize. And most of these places, there's no hot water, no power, there's no phone, and there's no way to get in touch with anyone. So if you break a leg, you call Global Rescue. So it's pretty cool. So you can be like a regular stiff and a business guy like me on a Tuesday, and then Wednesday you find yourself about 500 miles under jungle canopy. So the result of that is also, I think, what makes this kind of stuff interesting. We'll take pictures on these trips. We'll meet people. We'll interview them. We'll cut that stuff into films. It'll go out over the website. It'll go out over sort of the blogosphere. We'll make actual DVDs from this stuff and submit them to film festival. And again, this is stuff that agencies don't really do. And so we got a couple examples of how we do that. And it's very interesting when the agency gets involved because we play very different roles than we, say, normally or typically would. Jose, who will join us in a second, is a designer, is in the middle of working out basically T-shirt graphics. Jose's a designer, works on a computer, but he's cooked up a whole program that he's literally inking and using watercolors to create graphics. So that's fine art, and then he's pulling it into design and he's manipulating it, and very soon it'll be commerce. So he'll be selling these designs, and that's not something that we typically do for clients. So Jose will sign the fish prints, if you will, and so his signature, which is also, we're very behind the scenes at agencies, so this is very different, but Jose gets to be an artist, a designer, and also a businessman, if you will. So something that we did very recently, and this is, Tim kind of mentioned it, but really, really exciting. Guyana is a country in South America, and when I first heard we might be going there, I thought it was in Africa, and I was a decent geography student, but if you imagine the ice cream cone or whatnot, it sits at the top next to Venezuela, and it's an extremely poor country. There's a little town, if you will, near the coast called Georgetown, and near Georgetown, and you and I are the only ones that would remember this, but there was sort of a disaster many years ago where a guy named Jim Jones had a cult and he killed a lot of people by having them drink the Kool-Aid, which is where the expression comes from. The only thing Guyana is known for is a mass suicide. So we went down to kind of turn that perception around, and we're working on a fisheries management program down there with the United Nations and UNESCO and some other non-government organizations. Some pretty heady stuff, and I didn't go to school to do that, so I'm figuring it out as I go. But as far as what that looks like and what that place is like, it's like the land, it's like dinosaur era, and it's pretty crazy. So I went in January, and I had a Super 8 camera, which you can buy on eBay for about $15. There's 2 places left in the States that'll develop that film. One's called Pack Lab in New York. Cost about $65 for 50 foot or 3 minutes. So it's actual film, negative film. So when you travel with it, it's got to go in like a special case, and it can't go through the big X-ray. And it's kind of funny going in the jungle with a camera that Jimmy Connors would have owned, or you would have seen news footage from like Walter Cronkite era. Anyway, this is a 3-minute piece that we cut together. Jose did the titles for it, and it looks like it was shot in 1941. I think only a handful of people in the world have ever fly fished in these lakes. So we taught him how to fly fish, and then he immediately caught a piranha. So this is pretty cool. The idea and the sort of notion of the mission is to train or teach these people how to guide and fly fish. And then the Germans and the Scandinavians and the Japanese will all come down there, and they can actually begin to build an economy through sport fishing and fisheries management. So it's kind of heady stuff. It sounds complicated, but it looks pretty cool. So those are kind of examples of stuff we do. And we make print ads. And Tim is responsible for these, but why don't you tell him kind of...
Yeah, sure.
This is one of the cooler things we've done, I think, this year.
Well, I wanted to back up, and one thing that Austin said earlier that's, I think, really important for you guys to remember is that, you talked about you kind of do this and you kind of do that, and, you just kind of learn to do different things in this business. It's a weird business in that, a lot of times if you're an accountant, you deal with numbers and you deal with money, and there's not a lot of gray or not a lot of jumping outside of that. I mean, he's shooting film, he's an account guy, he's doing producing, we're fishing. I mean, the more versatile you can be, the more you can offer how to make something better or make something happen, the more valuable you'll be in the business. So I think that's something to remember, that no matter what you do, whether you get into film or you get into photography, just try to learn a lot of things about whatever business you're in, because that's really going to help you become more valuable. And when you become more valuable, you make more money, which is good, and you get more satisfaction out of your career, and you can actually do different cool things. So I think that's a real important thing for you guys to take away today. But so we talked about film. This is print ads, things you see in newspapers and magazines are a big thing that we do here too. Costa, again, talking about Costa, we typically run a lot of fishing magazines, a lot of the bad fishing magazines. You've probably seen somebody reading at some point. And we're in those, but we've also been tasked to go into some different kinds of magazines and try to introduce people to the brand, to these sunglasses. And one of the places that we talked about going into was in Australia, and even in some places in Texas that are not known to fishing as far as the publications. So we were tasked with, how do we tell people about who we are? That was the first thing. People in fishing a lot of them know Costa, but a lot of people outside of fishing or people outside the States don't know. So we said, how do we come up with a print ad that's very, very direct and very very quick about saying we are a brand that's born from fishing, born from being on the water. So we came up with this idea of actually creating fish out of the sunglasses. And so I'll pass these around and I'll show them to you on screen as well. And so this is a bass that I'm sure just about all of you guys have seen. And, it's just one of those things where I had to sit there kind of like a puzzle, figure out every piece where would it go? You know, how many lenses would it take to make scales, and would lenses even look like scales? This next one's tarpon, if any of you guys or your folks saltwater fish. And so these things are built pretty big. You'll see them in a minute, but built pretty big. But I mean, you know, what we had to do to build these was we had to find a model maker who was up in New York. We had to send them a lot of products. So like this fish alone has over 100 lenses just to make the scales. But to get 100 that would go on there correctly and be built correctly, I mean, we sent several hundred pairs of things. So a lot of maybe $15,000, $20,000 worth of sunglass product just to build fish so that we could photograph them.